Welcome back to the What Are You Driven By podcast. In this season, in season 2, we are really exploring the challenges and the changes that shaped who people are and what drives them. So maybe you're going through a difficult time or someone you love is going through a difficult time. Our goal is that you might discover someone who went through a similar situation and can give you the strength or the insight to help you make it through. So make sure you subscribe to the What Are You Driven By podcast and connect with us online at Driven By Co. Now, on this episode, we have Yasmin Khan, founder and principal consultant, who is an accomplished leader with a multifaceted background in research, strategic planning, learning, and procurement. So, welcome, Yasmin. Do you mind introducing yourself to our listeners?
Well, thank you for just such a lovely welcome, and just I'm so happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to connecting with your audience. So basically, I'm Yasmin. I am living the consultant life. So basically, I'm an independent consultant, and I totally switched careers. Like I went from being a dedicated civil servant and law librarian, and I'm just completely, decided like I need to do this, and I'm jumping off the deep end. So it is scary but exhilarating at the same time, and every emotion you can possibly imagine, I probably felt it or I'm feeling it right now. So I've just been developing myself as an entrepreneur and independent consultant since late last year. I mean, I kind of knew like I really wanted to get going on this since May 2023, and it's just been just a process ever since. Like it, just moving more and more in that direction.
Hmm.
My previous experience includes 20 years of government service at the federal level as a research librarian. Then I spent 10 years at the city of Toronto, and I was uh, I was their law librarian there. I managed their research and information services there, and then I did a short stint at the province doing very similar work, and and then I've had contracts here and there, and COVID hit, and that's kind of where I had to take a very serious career break since I had very seriously ill family members. There's all the mayhem of we don't know if the world's gonna end, and we lived through a lot, I think, in the last little while, the last 3 years, and I think it just made me realize, you know what? If the world is gonna end, then why am I staying still?
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so I pulled a lot out of that. And one of the things that I got from that was you really know your research because in the bio, it talked about you have a really strong background in research. And it's really true, a research librarian. So you really know your stuff. Now, what I want
Yeah.
to know is, you talked about making this career shift. So can you tell us more about your story and how that all happened?
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to say yeah in like a totally, you know, I'm the best kind of way. I was just like, yeah. So, I tend to be really gregarious. I guess, so I apologize if that came off weird.
No,
But
not at
anyways,
all.
how did this all happen? So I spent 20 years working in specifically for lawyers. So I did a specific type of research, which is legal research, which is very detail oriented and also quite thrilling. Like it's like being a detective and helping the lawyers finding
Mm.
cases and articles and you know pulling things together for them, like to help them with their research, teaching them how to do research, looking at technology. I did a lot of procurement in those years and managing vendor relationships with leading legal technology vendors and publishers. So it was quite a varied time. I enjoyed my time in that area. And, a lot of it was also managing a traditional law library as well. And I would say that I've always looked at being managing a law library, like a physical law library, like having a storefront. So I always felt like an
Mm.
entrepreneur in of itself. So I've always had that drive of being like, I'm going to be very entrepreneurial with my services. Like, how do I get people in the door? How do I, you know, like a lot of research is now online. It's not in paper. It's not in books,
Mm.
or it's a lot of it's like database oriented, but people still want physical space, to convene and connect. And how do you pull those elements of service together? And I guess it was just, and I've been doing this type of work for a long time, and it just felt like, I just had to listen to my heart, and I felt like My heart was telling me that I needed to change. And I've always been kind of even though I've been in civil service for a long time, I was always restless. I was like
Mm.
in great conflict of wanting to stay in the comfort of the public sector and establish structure and keep growing myself there because there's a lot of opportunities in the public sector to grow and excel. But I was always restless. I mean, I moved different levels of government after different stints in different areas. I'm not someone who stayed somewhere for 30 years. And I have a lot of respect for people who do that too, because they become specialists and just the carriers of knowledge in those organizations. But I always felt like, okay, I've accomplished, this arc or that arc, and now it's like I'd like to try new things. So I did that within the government space by working for three levels of government. And then I also did a second master's degree in the meanwhile. So
Oh,
I have my
what?
yeah, I have a master's in library science. Well, the degree is information studies at U of T, but it's an accredited library science degree, and I could have just kept that, but I just always had a passion for learning, and I know things were changing. And this is like the 2010s, like 2015, and so I couldn't find a program that really spoke to me, so I ended up taking a program in the States at Columbia University in information and knowledge strategy, and it was like the first of its time. Like now you can do a lot of like MBAs that have like a technology focus or design thinking or strategic foresight and innovation. Like when I was looking for that, it wasn't around.
Hmm.
So it was also a great program because I didn't have to live in New York City. I basically did most of the schoolwork online. I had to travel back and forth to New York City. And I had a very supportive employer at the time. And it was great. And I have made lifelong friends. Just the philosophy of education in the US is so different than Canada, and that culture and the vibrancy of New York. It was just wonderful.
Wow, that is very impressive. I did not know that about you, that you have this depth of knowledge, and I find you to be so modest and so humble about it. But you've got some key strategies and skills up there.
Ah, thank you.
You're very welcome. So that's such an interesting journey. And I'm glad to have you on the podcast because I really like hearing about diverse stories and different journeys. And this one is very much unique and one that I'm going to be learning about too. So I always ask people, is there a particular experience in your journey that taught you the biggest lesson?
You know what? I think it's maybe this is cliche, but life is short. And you gotta like seize
Mm.
the day, the carpe diem. I waited a really long time and I stayed in my comfort level, and it made me very cautious and a bit timid. And like I have regrets not following the consultant route earlier in life. You have more to lose as you age.
Hmm.
I'm in my mid 40s now, and I'm like, oh, I'm making a whole new switch now. um, where I think when you're earlier, you can take greater risks in some levels. But I also realize too that this is all a mindset. I can think I'm old and I can think I'm young, or I can think I'm in the middle. I'm everything and anything in between. So yeah,
Hmm.
I feel old, but I have a young spirit. But am I really old? Like, it's just every day you wake up, you're feeling different anyway. So, if you can harness the way you think and just really pay attention to your mindset, you can actually do anything you want.
Yeah. Okay. So in your case, you would have maybe gone the consultant route a little bit earlier because
Yeah,
you had the skills and abilities, and it was just a matter of whether or not you were willing to take that leap.
exactly. Because it's really hard going off the deep end. Like, you're on a diving board and it's like that, jumping off is hard. Like,
Yeah.
you, I spent a long time clinging to the diving board.
But
And,
justifiably so, because like you said, like the older you get, the more you do have to lose. You have more responsibility as you get older, and it is very true. So it just becomes a little bit more scary that gamble, but it's one of those things where it's like no risk, no reward. So eventually you got to jump, and you did. So we're happy and we're celebrating that and excited for your brand new journey.
Thank you. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm so glad to be finally here. And it's a process. Like sometimes it's just like I'm a big believer in the universe, and sometimes you have regrets of not starting things earlier, but sometimes it's just all about timing and being ready now. And who knows like how things would have worked out earlier in life, but you can't look back. You can only be in the present moment. And I think that's another thing that's really important, is that the moment is the only thing that is ever certain.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. You're so right. And you're right. There's no value in looking back and saying, I wish I would have done that. I regret this or I regret that. It's just like, okay, those were the decisions that I made. It brought me here. I have this expertise and this knowledge, and this is what I'm going to do next. And just
I think a
making that
lot of also
decision.
I think a lot of things is also, you know, we're in the habit of always being critical about our past. And I think you
Hmm.
have to celebrate the learning that you had to do to get there, because it's a journey. Sometimes, when you're running a marathon, like it's a long race, and you know, you may had to have taken a break. You have to refuel, you have to adjust what you're doing, and these decisions don't come lightly. So it's a journey. Like you take a wrong route, but then you take the wrong route. But if you didn't do that, then you wouldn't have learned what you've learned. Sometimes you learn just as much from where you've been, and then you take that learning and move forward with it.
Exactly. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm gonna ask you to share a moment that might have been a little bit more difficult in your journey or your marathon. And I want to dive into your motivation a little bit because a lot of us, we go through periods of time where our motivation dips a little bit and we're constantly seeking, how do I respark my motivation? So, is there a time where you can think back in your journey where you feel like you didn't have any motivation? And in that moment, were you able to identify what was blocking your motivation?
Well, I mean, I could talk about recently in January. I was very unmotivated. I was in a deep
Ah,
funk, just in January. Just like literally last month, I just couldn't see myself being energized about anything. You think that New Year's is a time where you're re-energizing, you're setting goals, and you're making New Year's resolutions. I couldn't do any of that. I was just like really in a deep funk. I was sick in late December, like so I just was like not feeling great, and took me out. I mean, I was just feeling really ill, and just with a really, just like, like bad cold, and you're sniffling and you're in bed. At this point, I don't even know if it was COVID. It could have been COVID. At this point, I didn't even test. It's like, oh, whatever, I was just like
yeah.
in bed. And just really, it took me like a couple of weeks to get better. And then you're so lethargic, you have less energy, and you're just not feeling great because of that. So it was really hard to spark any motivation to keep going, and it's the winter too, because it's bleak out there and you're not getting much sunlight. So my motivation was non-existent. And
Mm.
I think coming out of it, I think was more, I talked to people about how I was feeling. It's like, I'm not feeling great. I'm feeling really low. I don't feel confident. I don't feel good about myself right now. And I think talking to my friends and family and having their support really boosted. It was a process getting out of the funk. I think a
Mhm.
lot of January was just like, I need to get out of this funk, but
Mhm.
you don't flip a switch and say I'm motivated. Like it takes time and effort to get your spirit back.
Mhm.
You
Absolutely.
exercise, you know, you don't force yourself to feel anything. You're going with the flow, but you're focused on things that boost you. I think that is a really important thing, like going for walks, talking to people, doing things that you actually do enjoy and lift your spirit. And then you slowly like come out of it. I feel like when you're in that funk, it's kind of like its own little illness.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And especially when it comes to your health, I
Hmm.
find that can be so, I want to use the word distracting just because I know that when I feel sick or I'm in pain or something's wrong, I find like I can't focus on anything else but trying to fix that because it just pulls my focus away from any of my goals or anything that I have going on. And there was also a time in my life where my health was really bad and I was
Mm,
constantly getting sick. Like every 3 weeks, I was like, I'm sick again. I'm sick again. And for me, that's when my motivation was really low. But it was actually a result of so much more that was going on. And I think it just
yes.
manifested physically.
Yeah,
But then
it's a
you're right.
symptom. Yeah,
Yeah. Right?
yeah. Yeah, no, totally. Like I felt I think, you're going on this journey and you're working for yourself and you're putting all these energies together, but at the end, like you don't have a steady paycheck and that's really
Hmm.
scary, and you're living off savings and you're seeing, oh, how much do I have to conserve this month? And what can I do to boost my chances of doing this, and that?
Hmm.
It's also really I find the entrepreneur community is the most welcoming I've ever experienced in my life. Like, I feel like everyone could be scared and competitive and just secretive, but it's actually a really open community and it moves fast. I like that actually. Like,
Yeah.
you know, people decide quickly, I want to work with you and to not want to work with you. And I think that is like, when you're in an organization, there's so many processes and policies and protocols that one has to follow, and that's important. Like, I don't want to say but when you're in the entrepreneurship world, things move quickly, and I like that. Like, I know where I stand at any given moment.
Exactly. And you know what? This made me think of this Denzel Washington quote, and it goes, "You will never be criticized by someone who's doing more than you. You will only be heckled by those doing less." And it just speaks to the fact that entrepreneurs are working so hard, and so they understand how isolating it can be sometimes. And so
Hmm,
they're not going to go and criticize you. It's more like, okay, how do we work together to win? Because we need each other. I found,
exactly.
right?
Well, even I think about this a lot, and I think being part of the entrepreneurship community has really taught me to be kind to myself, and really that everyone's so welcoming and supportive. Like, I mean, you're always going to meet, oddballs here and there, whether you're working for people or working for yourself and you're networking, you're making connections. There's going to be, ups and downs. But on the whole, I would say it's a really welcoming community. And I think when I'm learning from other people, just being kind to other people, but also be kind to yourself. Because if you're not kind to yourself, how can you be kind to others too, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Like, I think we're all boost each other's confidence and learn to have confidence ourselves. I think that's what the community has really taught me.
Absolutely. And just bringing it back to, the time that you had in January where you weren't feeling your best self, and you mentioned talking to your family and friends. And I just wonder, was there anything specifically that somebody said that really helped pull you out of that slump?
I think it's just, I had a particular friend just said just taking things one step at a time, and just, focus on where you are now and just not force anything.
Hmm.
And, feelings feelings don't stay the same, like it's like a barometer. It's like, the weather, right? And just I think anxiety, like a friend of mine said, it's like blocked excitement. Like, we're just so anxious and it cripples us, right? But if you just take it one step or one breath at a time, things don't seem as scary. But when you're focusing too much on the farther future, like, how am I gonna how am I gonna make ends meet? Or, 3 months from now, if I don't have this, or what if I'm gonna stay in this same spot forever? What if
Hmm.
things don't change? What if, like, I'm a failure? What if I have to find a job? What if I have to, leave this and do that? And, there's all these thoughts, and then it goes to I'm not good enough and it's never going to happen for me. And, we all have these self defeating thoughts. And I think when you just can, you know, tell yourself and be kind to yourself and say, hey, this is where I am here in the now, here in the now. You can focus on this breath. I can focus on this really nice walk, this really cool conversation, and I can go from there. And
Yeah.
and having faith is really important, like, just believing in what you're trying to do, believing in yourself and believing in others. I think when we bring that energy out there, like, that's really important, and I think this whole journey has made me really focus on belief and faith,
Yes, I
and
couldn't
it can
agree more.
take many forms, you know?
Absolutely. And I think there's a huge difference between when you show up to work as an entrepreneur without believing in yourself, you show up vastly different than if you have that self-belief and self-confidence and assurance that you know what you're doing. But as soon as you start to question it, I feel like it's so evident to the people around you, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's a lot of it's a lot of thought. You can get stuck in your thought patterns too, and I mean, you don't just become confident. It's something you have to practice every day.
Hmm. Exactly. One step at a time. That's what your family member said, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Now, my next question is really about as you're working on different projects, and I guess particularly as a consultant, your work is would be very project based. So I wonder, are there specific elements of a project that really draw you in or that make you feel engaged?
I think there's a couple things that really speak to me. First of all, as a consultant, you get to choose everything. Like when you're in the working world, everything's set for you. You're 9 to 5, you have your set roles, your set tasks, your set meetings, your breaks, everything's scheduled around that world. And it gives a lot of stability, and people can really do a lot of things in that structured time. But your time is so incredibly unstructured. You literally wake up in the morning and say, I'm not coming to work. There is no sick days because every day could be a sick day potentially. So when I approach work, there's two things that are really important to me. One is working with cool people and really being curious about something. There's something, oh, that is really cool. I'm really curious about that specific problem they're trying to solve or
Mm.
where they're going to go from here. Um, and just really focusing on like, and when I say working with cool people, that's a number of different factors. So when I think of cool people, I work within a network with other consultants, and then we're applying for bids together. And
Wow.
uh, we're applying for bids, and we're looking for who we can connect with that might want to join us on a bid. So, I'm a solo consultant, but I also, if there's a larger project, I'm working with maybe one or two people. Like, so we might be a trio, or we might be two people working together because the projects are, when you work with other consultants, you can really pool a lot of complementary skills and really be excited about pitching something or working on a project. Because, as you said, like, being on your own is really lonely, but when you have these synergies that come up with different people, I mean, it's just awesome, and there's
Mhm.
stuff what you do independent as well that's just as fulfilling. So you always wanna work with clients you believe in their journey, and that you really are motivated to help them succeed. So it's not about you, it's about them, right? It's like, yeah, I wanna work on a cool project, who doesn't? But it's like, do I believe in this person, their organization, their journey? Because I'm the type of person, I have to be all in, like, I wanna be really committed, to those people, and, there's the work speaking for itself, but showing up every day for the people that need you and need your
Mhm.
services.
Yeah, okay. So there's an element of curiosity there for your
Mhm.
engagement and then belief in, whatever the client is trying to do and wanting to be a strategic partner, it seems like.
Yeah, yeah, I think so, and being a strategic partner doesn't just happen overnight. It's a lot of the work that I do is very relationship driven, so it's about, you know, where can we find that connection and that commonality, and where are we complementary? Like, I like being surrounded by people that have different skills, because then you learn from those and you can share what you know, and you learn a lot about yourself when you're going through things like this. Like, you know just like, because the entrepreneurial world is really fast paced, you're learning to think on your feet, you're learning to communicate succinctly about your value proposition. And I'm still learning. Like, I feel like sometimes my academic background holds me back because
Hmm.
I can be very cerebral sometimes and really stuck in the weeds. And people want to know who we are. Like, just tell me in one sentence. And it's like, I'm just like, I don't know. you know?
Oh, that's an interesting perspective. So because of your strengths in academia, it's almost like it seems like you want to provide more detail and more depth to things, even when it's meant to be something that is succinct or just a quick like elevator pitch. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
I do struggle with that because I tend to also be, I tend to be a very strong extrovert too. So like I'm like, I could pretty much talk this whole podcast away and and like just stopping and pausing and listening and those are things that I try to work on every time, that just remembering it's not all about me, and it takes time to figure out like how you want to communicate in what way. Sometimes I feel like writing is easier because
Mm.
you just can reflect on what you want to say. You can delete and edit, but your words are not deletable and editable. What comes out comes out.
Very true. Very true. And it's actually funny. I relate to what you mentioned about, struggling to be a little bit more succinct with your academic background. Just because when I started my journey in workshop facilitation, I always did too much. I had too much content. I was really just hammering home all these concepts to the point where I was teaching a lecture. It was no longer a workshop at that point. And I had to learn that I didn't need to over deliver this content because what they needed from me was a lot less. Because when you go to a workshop, you only really retain like 18% of what you hear.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Interesting.
yeah. So if I
Yeah,
could
it's distillation, right?
exactly. So if I could pare down the content a bit and then just give them opportunities to practice, it would be a much more worthwhile for their deep learning and for their retention. But it
Absolutely.
took time to learn that.
You're really onto something, Deandra, because I feel like we're going to be moving more into an economy where it's experiential. Like, people don't want to just passively listen to people anymore. It's not
Hmm.
like, people want to experience something. They want to feel something. They want to grow. They want to take value. And value is such a big concept. But when people feel engaged in something and experience something together, like doing an exercise in a workshop versus listening to a 5 point framework, like,
Hmm.
I think when instead of listening to the framework, what if they had to, action it out in the workshop? Like, apply it
Yeah.
to something in real life that they experience. Though I think people feel a lot more engaged. And, I'm also really thinking a lot about artificial intelligence and where that's going to take the
Ah.
world. And I firmly believe that we're going to move away from doing tasks to designing tasks. And what is that going to look like? What kind of skill set is are we going to need to? I think we're going to be architecting more, developing a structure for task development, and that task development is going to be more and more automated.
Oh, that's so interesting. Huh. So
So there's
moving
an
away from
opportunity to design and actually be more creative in the way you think and solve things.
and AI could be used to fill in the gaps, it sounds like,
Possibly, yeah.
right?
Save time, be a really powerful starting point, not an end point
Hmm.
necessarily. And like with any great tool, it can be used for good and evil. We just have to find out what the balance is and what our purpose is when we're doing these things.
Hmm. Oh, this is very interesting. So, okay, now I'm interested into this AI, because I know you've got some experience in this. And so I just want to know, what do you think are right now our best uses for AI and especially with what you've seen with your clients?
Well, I think people are looking to figure out how they can leverage the AI as a tool.
Hmm.
So I think, before there was a lot of legwork to get to a starting point. And now I think AI can assemble and crunch a lot of information, synthesize. So you're starting with something so much better. Instead of having to research for 10 hours and, try to find the right team all at once It can triangulate a number of different sources of information to give you a greater starting point. So maybe you want to develop a better project plan using AI. Like you can do a lot of that grunt work earlier, and
Hmm.
then you can assemble the right team. Like, okay, now that we know what we're going to do, maybe we can get the right humans involved and with the right skill sets. And, we don't have to spend so much time describing something because we have everything summarized here. We can actually get to doing faster. And I think there's a lot of creative uses in terms of people think that AI is going to steal everyone's human spirit and creativity, and I don't think that at all. I think the human
Okay.
mind is such a mystery. How we came into this universe is still a mystery. Like we are all
True.
actually, if you look at how our makeup, genetic makeup, we're all made out of stardust. So when I think of that, how can an AI compete with that? Like there is no competition because we are of and from this world. And the AI is a reflection, like a mirror of how we think, act, and feel. So if we think more about believing in ourselves and just the magic of the universe, I don't think the AI is necessarily a threat. It's a companion to help us along our journey. And I think when I look at some of the client work I'm doing with people looking and I'm trying to understand AI, it's a matter of like, how do I leverage the expertise I have and see what gets reflected back in the mirror?
Wow. I love how you connected the stars and the stardust and our human makeup to looking at AI as a reflection of our thoughts. And it's so true. I had never heard AI described like that because you always think about, the iRobot movies and all the potential dangers. And there's even a concern in schools for using AI to cheat and get ahead on assignments. But it really is like you get in what or you get out what you put in.
It's a
So very
conversation, like a
mm,
prompt. Think of the prompt as conversation. What
mhm,
you say, what is what will come back, right? Like how, like when you develop a prompt, how you phrase a question will determine your answer. There's still thought
mhm,
behind it.
mhm,
And I think we all understand what's BS. Like, people understand what a chat GPT is going to produce and what a human produces. I still think, yes, and there could be a lot of mimicry, but again, it's like a reflection, right? But I think when you see authenticity. Like people know what's real.
absolutely. Now, okay, switching gears a little bit and talking about our own human happiness. My question is, what do you think people need in order to be happy?
I think being surrounded by good people, like people and community, I think is going to make you more happy than being a multimillionaire, to be honest. Hey, we all want money, but I think money is just the tool, like it just, who are the people, uh, who are you with, and you're on this journey, and it's all about who you're surrounding yourself with, and waking up every day and looking forward to spending time with people, and spending time in activities where you're learning. Like I'm always curious about anything and everything, and just exploring our world, and doing it with people, that spark our imagination, or just like that interchange. Like sometimes we don't know why we like the people we do. They're just interesting, right?
Hmm.
So I find being around good people and good work, like interesting work that's curious, that fuels my brain, that where I want to make a difference more than anything. And I think money is an ebb and a flow. Yeah, we're all motivated, but I don't want to work for clients where I'm miserable either. I want to work for people that I believe in, who we can do something together. It's not just about it's about we. It's like creating, co-creating, collaborating, and that we're putting the best minds and the best abilities together. So, you know, I guess I probably end the question also with, stop caring what the world is going to think, believe in yourself, and you'll be surprised where it's going to take you and
That
other
is,
people.
yeah. That was beautifully said, and that's also the great thing about entrepreneurship is you get to choose the people you're surrounded with, you get to choose your
Exactly.
team, and I think you're absolutely right in saying that because once you can construct an environment that supports you and supports the things that you want and is reflective of your positive beliefs, it just changes the outcomes of
I
your
also
daily
think
life.
there's a duality of saying yes and no, because if you don't learn to say no, then you can't concentrate on the things you say yes to. I mean, I've
Yes.
had that experience too, where I have decided I don't want to work with on this project. I can be really excited and very exuberant at the beginning, but sometimes when you get into the details and you realize, actually, this isn't what I really thought. And you have to manage expectations constantly when you're an entrepreneur, just like in life. And sometimes it's just things move really quickly. Like you might be like something, but then you realize, oh, wait, now that I'm digging deeper, this isn't actually a problem I'm really suited to solve. I think it might be better for somebody else and be able to give that away. And I think that takes time to figure out, there's always a period of exploration in entrepreneurship. You're working and you're talking to so many different people. And sometimes it's great and it works out. And sometimes you have to learn to say, no, like this isn't what I thought it was going to be, and take a step back. I mean, if you don't learn to say no, how can you say yes?
I think that is so important, and that is something that I'm going through now. Like, there's so many opportunities that come at you, and while you might want to do all of them and take advantage of all these different things, you simply can't. And time is such a valuable resource that you have to pick and choose. And if you're going to forward your goals, you need the time to dedicate to them, and that
Yes.
involves saying no. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a hard thing. It's hard to say no.
it
And
is.
like I'd want to work with everybody. And even the problems that aren't interesting, you always find a way to make it interesting. So
Hmm.
that's not necessarily the issue. Anything can be interesting depending on what lens you're looking at it. It's just a matter of, you know, am I the right person for this? Am I going to bring them enough value? Are we going to be a good fit together?
Hmm.
Those are things that are sometimes hard. And you know, it becomes more and more complex, depending on what the opportunity is and the complexity, the money involved and the people involved. But I think if you focus your energy on things that interest you, I think you'll bring more value into that.
Absolutely. Now, I think this is a perfect time to ask you for a piece of advice, for anyone who might be going through a similar journey or a challenge or anything like that. Based on your experience, what advice would you like to leave our listeners?
Well, I think when you're starting anything new, like a new venture, a new startup, or you're changing your career, at the outset, I think your family and friends may not understand what you're trying to do or accomplish. They don't, like, why are you doing that? Stay where you are. Like, they're just trying to be protective and they don't understand. So, you're hearing a lot of like, no, don't do that. Stay where you are. Like, and it seems like a lot of negativity. And I think, just being able to like, focus on what's making you drive towards that purpose, like really believing in yourself, believing in what you're trying to accomplish. Like I think belief is so important. It's fundamental because it's a really hard game being an entrepreneur. You have to work for every little bit that you've got. And if you don't have the reservoir of belief and spirit, it's going to be a really difficult journey, and that's why motivation is so important. And you've mentioned this in your podcast, how there's motivation and their action, but they're two sides of the same coin, because without motivation you can't act, and then when you act without motivation your results are going to be flat. So I think it's very important that it's not just about being focused, it's about bringing it all together, like knowing who you are, discovering who you are. And sometimes it's just about being curious. Sometimes you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know why you're doing something. Just you have to see something through. And I think it's just showing up every day. Showing up.
I love that. And I think I could feel all the experience in that answer because it just goes to show that there are several challenges that you have overcome and you've taken so many lessons from them, and I think that you continue to apply that into your journey every day. And so my final question for you is one that I ask everyone, of course, is Yasmin, what are you driven by?
Curiosity. There's so much we don't understand about this world, and I want to find out what's
Wow.
out there.
Wow. You know what? And that's been a theme in your answers today, which I find so interesting. So you're driven by curiosity, and in your position as the principal consultant and founder of your new consulting company, you get to tap into your drive every single day because you get to be curious in all these projects that you're supporting. So I think
Oh,
you
yeah.
have aligned yourself so well. Like things
Well,
feel,
you know, I love mysteries. Like I watch a lot of British mysteries. I love like
oh,
that kind of. I just I like detective stories. I like that's how I came into research. Like you're detecting, you're trying to find something for a lawyer, and I really loved being part of that journey. And then I realized, okay, the research journey is great, but I want to apply that broader and bigger than just a niche area of legal research, which is wonderful.
ah,
I've enjoyed it, but just there's like I've worked with startups now, and I've like how do we develop a probabilistic algorithm for this to help me develop a prospect list, and just when it's what it's like. My mind, it's like a set of Lego, and you're putting pieces together and taking them apart all the time. And if
mm,
you were a kid with a Lego set, it's like having your own paintbrush, but you have these blocks that can be anything you put them when you connect the different pieces, and they're the small ones or the big ones. You can make it look exactly like what they're building in the kit, or you can go off in a really weird direction, and it's all good. There's no wrong answers.
right.
Just
Wow.
like what's applicable.
Yeah, that was a great visual too. I love that. So, driven by curiosity, and you're excellent with mysteries. So, if we ever play Clue together, you're probably gonna win.
Oh, I'm actually the worst at Clue because I
No
like
way!
people too quickly because I'm so impatient. Like, I'll just have my
Okay,
cards and I'm
noted.
like, "Oh, right, I forgot. I'm not supposed to say that."
Oh, it's the extrovert in you.
Yeah, but, like, I do like a good mystery. Like,
Yeah.
I like the type of mystery where it's more like the mystery that they're trying to solve isn't actually the mystery. It's just a symptom of a larger
Mm,
conspiracy, and
with all of the.
I think when I think about my work and I think about, being curious and solving a mystery, it's like, how and where can we make a difference together?
Exactly. Now, with that being said, where can our listeners find you if they wanted to get in touch?
Well, because I just I'm going to be, well, it's already out, but I do have a new website that I've put a lot of my heart and soul under. So if you can share that URL, I mean, it's Yasmin Khan Consulting consulting.com. So just my name, consulting.com. So you can learn more about me through there. I am going to be blogging. I do have one blog post just to introduce myself. I'm hoping to post this conversation we have when it's ready. And I'm just going to be starting to blog on a lot of different topics. And if you can sign up for the newsletter. I just have that one post right now, but I am looking to start adding content as early as next week,
Wonderful. And
and just being consistently writing, and then we'll see from there where that takes us. But just to share some musings and some just some exploration, and just on some interesting issues through the blog, and hopefully we can be curious together, just like we're curious on your podcast, which I think is wonderful.
exactly. So we get to see the product of your curiosity through your blogs and your newsletter. So
For
you heard it
sure.
here first, right? You heard
Yeah.
it here. Please go and connect with Yasmin online on her new website and get in contact with her if you are looking for a consultant that really knows how to put the Lego blocks together and solve those mysteries. So Yasmin, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to the What Are You Driven By podcast. We hope to see you next time for another life changing motivational story.